when we're talking about EMF effects, we're not talking about inorganic macro effects. We're talking about micro organic, biologic effects. It's in a different world. So here we go. My talk is organic micro effects of EMF. One of the problems here is that there are two businesses, essentially business models, that you cannot sue for medical effects. One is the vaccine industry, and one is telecommunications. Isn't that interesting? And why? And one of the things that happens, besides the fact that the literature is corrupt, I have another talk, and I show you that the literature, the medical and scientific publishing, is owned by the intelligence services. Okay, a big chunk of it, if not all of it. And so they put out what they want you to, it's part of the intelligence war. They put out what they want you to know, and they don't let us publish what they don't want you to know. So keep in mind, you can't get easily the true picture here. One of the things they've done is they've made a boogeyman of cancer, and then they've knocked it down. They're saying, oh, this idea that EMF can give you cancer, and then they tell you why it doesn't. Well, or they admit that it does in some cases, but they make it so outrageous that people then blow off everything else. So that's one of their little tricks. Here's in general the 5 ways that your biology, your cells in your body, and EMF interact. First of all, there's an electromagnetic field damage to your mitochondria. They're the little power cells of your body. I can't remember how many 100,000 mitochondria or millions of mitochondria, but they fill up a lot of your cell, and they are producing energy every second. And that's what this damages when you walk into an electromagnetic field of a certain size. And you have these things called voltage gated ion channels I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show you how that we have literature on immune suppression, how they can alter your brain wave. And then we'll talk a little about DNA damage and the directed energy weapons applications. And this is the way you do it. The way you produce energy has to do with how you metabolize. That's your metabolism happening in your mitochondria, the end result of metabolism. So if you're in an electromagnetic field and you don't have a good gradient and you can't metabolize right, not only can you get sick, but you can get diabetes, which is what happened to Thomas Edison and Alexander Graham Bell, who invented the telephone. These guys were lab electrical scientists, right? They spent all their time in these labs, but they did it at a time in the 1800s when there was no real electrical gradient. There was no electricity and EMF factors out in the world, okay, except in their lab. So the only EMF prior to 1900 that most people were around was the sunlight, the ionizing and non-ionizing radiation coming through the atmosphere from our sun and outer space, and the hum of the earth, which is the Schumann resonance of about 8.6 hertz, or was. I don't know if it still is. So these guys went from normal nothing into sitting in a lab full of electromagnetic equipment or electrical equipment putting out EMF fields, and they both got diabetes at a time. Now we think diabetes is common, right? But in the 1800s, it was a rare disease. Keep that also in mind. It's not just due to diet. It was a rare disease. And we knew that, okay? We learned about that way back. In fact, people started getting sick in the 1850s when they started laying down the telegram lines. And these telegram lines put out an electromagnetic field, and people that worked under them got sick. So they called it telegrapher's disease. People that worked on the railroad, the brakemen, the telegram operators themselves, the conductors, people like that, they would come down with this, and it was kind of a jittery thing. It never killed anybody, but it made you kind of miserable. The other thing is influenza. It turns out that before we laid down those telegram lines, we didn't have a yearly influenza. This happened after those telegram lines came down. Before that, influenza would break out every decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, and it would be universal around the world almost simultaneously, which can't happen in the age of, as they say, wooden ships and iron men. I mean, you couldn't travel that fast in 1800 to go from Fiji to Alaska and infect people. You just couldn't do it. So something else was going on here. They always tell you is there's no evidence in any medical journals about EMF. They want to dismiss that there's anything out there, but it damages our immune system. And 5G is just a new type, it's 5th generation. It's just a higher frequency. They've got all the frequencies open. It's not really this is what I'm telling you affects all electromagnetic frequencies. It's just some do different effects than others. Anyway, they put these mice in this 5G environment at a particular frequency, and they discovered that after 5 days, they had lost 50% of their immune cells, their white cells and other cells in the immune system. Now they were taken out after 5 days, and it came back. But how long does it take before it doesn't come back? We don't know that, because they don't test humans, right? They're not looking at that. Well, and actually they have now started to do this. But here's an example of a paper. It says that EMF effects on other biologic processes, for example, DNA damage, neurologic effects, are now widely reported to occur at exposure levels significantly below most current national and international safety levels. So there are people out there looking at this, and they know that it's a problem.